I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. I am starting a recording, so you'll hear that message because I had a few people who were unable to join tonight, but who wanted to still wanted the information. So, and we will probably have a few people who join as we get started. It is 7 o'clock, and I like to try to keep things on schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. Thank you guys for being here and being here, on time. So that's awesome. What I'm going to do is going to walk through. I am going to share my screen if I can find the right window.
Try to position myself to doing the yoga.
Yeah.
I've been there. Beautiful photos.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm going to share a little bit about this same trip that we've organized for December of this year. I did the same trip in March of last year. So the same itinerary, same locations, kind of the same deal. And I think it's going to be useful. In fact, the pictures that I'm sharing in these slides are actually from that trip. So when I did this, before the 2024 trip, I had to use sort of other people's photos to kind of present it. But now we have our own photos. So it kind of adds a little more, legitimacy to it. And I'm going to if I'm hearing noise, I might put you on mute. Or if you can mute yourself, just so that we can keep the background noise to a minimum, unless of course you need to talk, in which case you can either raise your hand, there's a little raise hand icon, or just visually, wave and let me know what's going on. All right, so here's what we're going to cover tonight. I'm going to talk about, Patagonia, and specifically Argentinian Patagonia is where we're headed. Patagonia is a huge area, and it spans two countries, both Chile and Argentina. We're going to be going to the Argentinian side, and I'll talk a little bit about why. We'll talk about the weather and what the weather is like in Patagonia. We'll walk through the itinerary, and I'll answer some of the questions that I get a lot of times over and over again, like what's the highest elevation? What kind of deposit do I need to make to reserve a spot? And when do I need to pay by, and those kinds of things. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about flights, and just share sort of my own perspective, having gone through this last year, and also just the checking I did. I've updated that this afternoon. And any other questions that you have, we'll get to those at the end. And hopefully, if I can give you an answer right there, I will. Otherwise, I will get you an answer if I can't. And I saw a couple other people join. Karen, welcome. Dennis, Harvey, welcome. Glad you guys could join. This is awesome. Can everybody see my screen? Give me a thumbs up, somebody. All right. Awesome. All right. So first I want to talk about the team. I will be the host for this trip. That's me there in Patagonia. And but I'm not the only person. So I'm basically the master of ceremonies, bringing everybody together and getting everyone excited about it and helping people stay on track. So like one of the things we do once the trip is confirmed is I will schedule probably 3 or 4 of these kinds of sessions with just the people who are traveling, just so we all get a chance to know each other, because we'll probably have some people from different areas. We have somebody from Southern California, a couple people, at least 3 people from Southern California, people from Central Oregon. We have people, last time we had people from Arizona. We had the Iceland trip we did last month. We had people from the East Coast. We had people from Minnesota and Oregon and California. So kind of all over the place. And some of us might know each other and some of us might not. And so it's a great way for us to kind of gel as a group. In addition, we will have a local guide who is with us through the entire trip. The local guide is with us from the beginning of our day to the end of the day. And I don't know who that guide, I won't know who that guide is, or we won't know who that guide is until about 3 or 4 days before the trip. Our guide last March was a guy named Carlos, and he was awesome. He did a great job for us, just kind of, getting us from A to B and making it a successful trip. And he had 30 years of guiding experience in Patagonia. He was super knowledgeable. He was born there. And the guides in Patagonia in Argentina have to go through a certification process that is really rigorous. So they have to go through all kinds of training to get to that point. And so that's kind of good to know. And then we'll have one or more hiking guides that go with us on each of the hikes as well. It's going to depend on the size of the group. Carlos, our local guide, was with us, but we also had 2 hiking guides, and one of them typically would take the lead, and another one would be the sweep. So you have 2 people who are also locals and know the terrain, know the environment really well, who are, kind of there, making sure, checking on everybody, seeing how they're doing. And they're also the ones who will help in case there is some kind of if there's a mishap, somebody twists an ankle or something like that, they'll help us resolve that kind of thing. So that's kind of what the team looks like here on the ground in Patagonia. All right, so why Argentina? Why the Argentinian side of Patagonia? A couple things that are, pros and cons, and I was chatting with Dennis, who was on here a little bit earlier today about that. There's really all of Patagonia is beautiful, firstly. And there's some really great things on the Chilean side, primarily the W Trek or the O Trek, which are more backpacking experiences where you go maybe from hut to hut, or you can wild camp along the trail, and you're carrying all of your gear and your food and everything all along with you. The side that we're on is a little bit different. Firstly, we'll be in the rain shadow of the Andes Mountains. The prevailing winds come from the west, just like they do on the west coast of the U.S. And when you're on that eastern side of the mountains, which we will be, a lot of the precipitation drops as snow in the mountains, and so it's a drier climate on the eastern side. They still get about an average of about 10 inches of precipitation a month. So there's plenty of water, but there's even more water on the Chilean side. And there was a couple who went on our trip in March who went a few days, 5 days before our trip began, and they went to the Chilean side and did some hiking over there. And the weather was awful. It rained, and they were just soaked all the time and cold, and sounded kind of miserable. Obviously, that's not always the case. I can't guarantee that it's going to be beautiful. We don't know what the weather's going to do, but we do know that, just generally speaking, it's like being on the eastern side of the Cascade Mountains. If you're in Central Oregon, it's a lot drier than on the western side. This particular trip and our base camp is going to be primarily El Chalten, which is a little village. It's not so little, but it's a village that actually is inside the national park, Los Glaciares National Park in Argentina, and it provides our base. So the hikes that we do, most of the hikes, we'll actually we'll walk to the trailhead from our hotel. So it has a nice mix of sort of the challenging adventure and the beauty, and some strenuous and challenging hikes that see amazing things, but also a lot of comfort. Like the hotels that we've got, we've upgraded this trip to use 4-star hotels, so we have a jacuzzi in the hotel, so you can go back and soak at the end of the day. And in El Chalten, there's all kinds of food available. There's microbreweries, there's pizza, there's Italian, of course there's Argentinian food, there's vegetarian food, there's anything you could want pretty much. And so it's really fun. You walk everywhere. It's small enough that you walk from one end to the other. Another thing that is really kind of fun is if you've ever, I don't have a piece of Patagonia attire on me right now, like the brand Patagonia, the Patagonia outdoor brand, but you know their logo, and that logo, which shows the little silhouette of the mountain, is an actual mountain range, and that's what we will be. It's from El Chalten. That's what we see where we will be, is that range. And the story behind that goes back to the 1960s when three guys, they called themselves the Fun Hogs, and they took a Volkswagen bus and they drove from California all the way down to the very tip of South America. And they spent a lot of time down in El Chalten, and they created a new route up Fitzroy, which is the iconic mountain that you'll see some photos of. And it's called the California route because of that. And one of those guys went on to found the brand Patagonia. One thing that it's not really a pro or a con or anything like that, but just something to really be aware of. And that kind of surprised me. I don't know why, but they're 5 hours ahead of the west coast of the US. There's a 5-hour time difference. And if you look at on a map, like the full globe, I don't have that here, but if you look at a full map of it's way east of our East Coast, and I always think of it as kind of being straight down, but it's not. It's way over. It's 5 hours ahead of time. So that is maybe if jet lag is a consideration, you might want to arrive a day early or two. Maybe you can spend a day or two in Buenos Aires and then transfer over. And we'll talk a little bit more about those options. So, what's the weather like? That's another question I get a lot of. The first month of summer starts in December, December 21st. And it's an enjoyable month in this area. The average temperature fluctuates between a high of 64.2 degrees and a low of 44 degrees. Those are averages. It could be colder, it could be warmer, but really comfortable hiking weather. That being said, that's a range that says, well, you're going to need to have layers, to be able to, peel layers off, put layers on. And for sure, it will be windy at times on some of the hikes. And it could, dump some precipitation either in frozen or liquid form. So we could, get some precipitation. But just to be aware, that's sort of that's their summer or the beginning of their summer. And it's a great time to go. I want to go through the itinerary, and I'm going to break it up into 2 blocks. So I'll talk a little bit about each of these days. Day 1 is really about us getting together for the first time and arriving in El Calafate. So El Calafate is about 2 and a half or 3 hour drive from El Chalten. That's where the airport is. That's where we'll fly into, and we'll spend a night there. And that first night, we'll all get together for a big welcome dinner at one of the local restaurants. Usually, it's just walking distance from our hotel. Day 2, we'll transfer to El Chalten all together on one big shuttle. And, once we check into the hotel and drop off our luggage and kind of stretch out a little bit, we have a hike to Mirador de los Condores y Aguilas, and that's the viewpoint of the condors and the eagles. There's 2 different viewpoints. Amazing views over the village of El Chalten. I'll show some of that. Day 3, the hike to Laguna de los Tres. That's our biggest hike. 16 miles with 23. It's the biggest mileage. It's not the biggest vertical gain, but it's the biggest mileage. And this is wrong. I don't know. It says optional rafting. That's changed. It is a via ferrata, and we did it actually changed before our trip in March last year. The Trova trip, one of the things that they're really big on is making sure that the local guides are doing, that it's a safe tour, that it's going to be something that everyone enjoys and it's safe. And there were some safety concerns with the rafting issue, so they switched to a via ferrata. Also optional, but so much fun. So this is the first day. these are the views that we get on the first day in El Chaltén. So we're hiking. You can see the trail in the foreground that we hiked up, and you can see the tallest peak on sort of the background in the right. That's Fitzroy, and it's just a great way to kind of like feel good about where we are and get excited about the area. Day 3 is the longest hike, a 16-mile hike. Some of the reviews of that particular hike, people have said it's the hands down the best hike of my life. It's been amazing, and it is pretty stunning scenery. And there's 3 lakes up there, and with depending on what the weather's like and everything else, it can be extraordinary. And there's lakes and forests that you hike through on your way up and back down. So this is kind of an out and back hike that we leave from our hotel on foot. The Via Ferrata is a blast. I don't know. Has anybody done a Via Ferrata before? No? Okay. So the Via Ferrata takes a route that would normally require technical rock climbing skills and expertise, and makes it accessible to mere mortals like us. And what they do, Via Ferrata actually means like iron road or iron trail. And it was first popularized in Europe, and this just opened a little over a year ago in just outside of El Chaltén. So we'll shuttle to this location, and it's a blast. So what you do is you wear a climbing harness and a helmet, and you'll be clipped into, you can see on the left-hand side, the steel cable. You'll be clipped into that cable from the beginning to the end. So the only thing that can happen is if you were to slip, is you might, kind of slump into, back a little bit. You're not falling anywhere. And they have, as you can see here, these iron steps that have been anchored into the granite, and you kind of like step across those, and you're climbing, and there's some ladders, and there's even some places where you traverse across a cable, and then it ends with a zip line across the canyon you just climbed out of. And I have a video of this that shows, it was a drone footage of our group, and it's just so cool because you can see in the background Fitzroy looming as it does, and here's somebody, I think that's Ligia from our last trip, hooking in, getting ready to do the zip line across that canyon and meet up with the rest of our group on the other side. So much fun. It is optional. My wife did this last year, and she said, I've done it once, and that's kind of it, because she's not real keen on the heights. So if you have a fear of heights, it's totally optional. You don't have to do this. But if you're feeling bold, I highly recommend it. It was a lot of fun. All right, the next 4 days look like this. A hike to Loma del Pliegue Tombado. I can't tell you what that stands for off the top of my head, but it's 13 to 14 miles with about 3,000 feet of gain. So it's actually a little more gain than that other hike that I mentioned, and amazing views. The first picture, well, I'll show that again. Los Humiles reserve hike. We actually drive to this location for that, and that takes us to a lake that is with a view of the glacier feeding right into it. Stop and have lunch, head back down, and then we'll transfer back to El Calafate. And from there on day 7, we do a trip to the Perito Moreno Glacier. The glacier itself, we have some great walks on a boardwalk that are just, almost, I don't know, a few hundred yards away from the base of the glacier. So the glacier feeds a lake, and we'll get a chance to walk all around that. And then there is an optional glacier trek where you'll get on a boat, go over to the other side of the shore, and then hike out to the glacier and do that. And then at the end of that day, we'll have our farewell dinner. And on day 8, we have breakfast and then head back to wherever we're coming from. So this is a view from the hike to Loma del Pliegue Tumbado. Incredible views of the area. And it does get windy there, but it was incredible. Now, this was taken on, I want to say, the 21st or 22nd of March of last year. And so it was just at the end of summer, and you can see they had already had some fresh snow. So a lot of times this will just be dirt and gravel and rocks, but we had snow there, and we didn't need any special gear or equipment for that. We didn't need to have traction devices or micro spikes or anything, but there was some snow. It made it really pretty. This is the lake that we hiked to at Los Humules Reserve hike. So there's this river that you kind of follow along and climb up, and different lakes, the green lake, the blue lake or lagoon, and then this glacier, just you can see the glacier in the background, feeds that lake, which then feeds the Diablo River. And it's a really pretty area. And then this is the Perito Moreno Glacier. This is actually from one of the boardwalks. So you can see we're very close to the glacier. And it's one of the largest, it's not the largest, but it's one of the largest in Patagonia. So it's an incredibly beautiful thing just to see. One of the things that was interesting was that it's continually sloughing off big slabs of ice into the lake. And so you'll hear this crack that sounds like thunder. And then, if you look around, you try to figure out where that's coming from, and you'll see this huge splash as the ice comes down into the lake. And it's pretty awesome. For those who decide to do the optional glacial trek, we'll actually hike out. They'll give us helmets and crampons. We'll hike out along the opposite shore of the lake from where the boardwalks are. So we take a boat across the lake, and then we hike out to the base, and then follow guides that will take us into up onto the glacier itself. And that's just a pretty amazing thing to see, and the blue ice and the colors and the crevasses and all kinds of things that are just pretty astounding. And the ice that we're walking on here is about 1,000 years old. It takes about 1,000 years for the ice to make it from the very top of the glacier all the way down to the near the base, which is kind of where we're starting. So I highly recommend that. There is an age restriction on this, and it's not placed by the guides or anything else. It's placed by the national park, and it feels a little arbitrary to me, but it's over 65 is not allowed. Pregnant is not allowed. There's a few other restrictions, like if you have breathing issues or things like that. There's certain things that they have requirements of, and you'll find that on the website. But there are, as I said, you look back here, you'll be able to see some pretty amazing shots just walking. There's like 3 or 4 miles of the boardwalk that you can wind around and do that. And there's a restaurant with a visitor center up at the top of that hill. So if you're not doing the glacial trek, you'll have that option as well. This just gives you a taste of some of the accommodations. This trip, most of the trips run through Trova Trip are usually younger crews, like a 20-something influencer on Instagram kind of thing or TikTok. I am not that 20-something. So I said, well, can we upgrade the hotels? Instead of 3-star, let's do 4-star. And that's what we got. So this was our hotel in El Calafate. And you can't see it really well here, but this was our hotel in El Chalten. And super great places, comfortable rooms, really nice accommodations. A full breakfast buffet in the mornings, every morning, and things like a a hot tub in the evening if you want to soak your tired legs or whatever. You can do that kind of thing. So really nice places. And this is really our base camp. The one in the upper right is really our base camp at El Chalten for the bulk of the trip. And it's a great place to be. As you can see, the views are amazing. And you just walk everywhere within town. Down below this, the guy on the left here is Carlos. He was our guide that first time in March. I don't know who the guide will be this year, but he came out to found a place that can take us all, and we had some great food, and there's a lot of really good choices for restaurants in El Chalten. So that just kind of just show a little flavor of that. All right, here's how this works for Patagonia. It's open to anybody in the social hikers community, their friends and family. We are all occupancy is double occupancy, so it works really well if you have a friend that you want to travel with or a partner that you want to travel with, but it's not required. We'll find somebody of the same gender who can, we'll pair you up with them for a room. There are some single occupancy rooms available. It is limited, and there is an add-on cost for that. So just be aware of that. I don't know exactly what that is, but you'll when you go to register, that gives you that option. We've been super fortunate, like all the groups where we've had, single people, single travelers, they were able to be paired up with somebody, and it worked out really well. So a lot of them are still in touch and friends today. So that's the thing that's really fun about this is traveling with a group. We'll be able to, really get a chance to know each other and have a lot of fun. And we have this experience that we've shared. And so we carry those relationships on into the future. So double occupancy, I upgraded everything to 4-star accommodations in both El Calafate and El Chalten. It is $44.50, but for the first 10 people, they save $200 just as an incentive to try to get people signed up. We need 10 people to sign up in order for us to have the trip confirmed. What that means is that 10 people have put down a 25% deposit. And the trip is not guaranteed to go ahead until we get 10 people. Once we have 10 people, the trip is considered confirmed, and then it's definitely happening. At that point, there are changes to the refund policy. All of that's on the website. I'll share that in a moment. And then if it's of interest to anybody, there are payment plans available through Affirm. I don't know anything really about that except for they offer that, and they have variable interest rates depending on your credit and blah, blah, blah. But that is a thing that you can do if that's of interest to you. Otherwise, you have to put a 25% deposit down, and then the balance can be paid however you want. You can pay it all at once, or you can pay it in little, once a month, or however you want to do it. But the full balance has to be due by September 10th. And you'll get emails from Trip about that, how to make sure that you're on track and all that. Once the trip is so a few other things to be aware. Don't book flights until the trip is confirmed. Because if the trip, for some reason, we don't get 10 people, I'm pretty confident we'll have 10 at least or more. But if for some reason we didn't have 10 people, everyone would get their money back, their deposits back, and all of that. Once it's confirmed, though, that's when you want to book your flights, because it's still maybe a question mark until then. So I recommend that you wait. And then as I mentioned, we'll do some, kind of meet and greets online. And if we can, like for Central Oregon, we may do some things in person. So Moon and Wit and I forget your name. We can meet in person and, get to know each other a little bit beforehand. But we'll definitely do some of these Google Hangouts. and we'll talk about questions and go into some of the nitty-gritty details that come up. I'll also share training guidance if you're concerned about hiking 16 miles or 14 miles, those kinds of things. We'll talk about coordinating, how we get to these places and arrive, and then visa requirements, all of that stuff. Once the trip is closed, so about 2 months before the trip, nobody else can join. So even after the 10th of September, there's still a month or so, or maybe, about a month where people can still sign up for the trip. So if you have somebody who's been sitting on the fence, they've been waiting to see if they could get the time off or whatever, they can still join. Of course, they'd have to pay in full after September 10th. And at that point, the trip is closed and the itinerary is finalized. The hotels, which they say it's going to be something, it's this or something like this, it's probably going to be the ones that they say on the itinerary, based on my past experience, but they don't guarantee that until the trip is closed and we know how many people are going and how many rooms we need and all of that. Visa requirements. I'll just say if you have a U.S. passport, there is no visa required to visit Argentina for up to 90 days. So there are no visa requirements. If you have a passport from another country, there is a tool on the Trove Trip website that will let you plug in, where your passport is from and etc. And it'll tell you what the visa requirements are if there are any. So, all right. What's the highest elevation? This is a thing that a lot of people, they see these mountains, they go, oh my gosh, it must be 10,000, 12,000 feet high. The highest elevation was this point on the hike, the 14-mile hike. Our top elevation was right around 4,200 feet. Now, a few of us went up to another ridge line, which was probably another 400 feet above that, but it's not very high. So it's not as high, for reference, if you're in Central Oregon, it's half the height of Mount Bachelor, it's or less. If you are in Southern California, it's like not even as tall as Mount Wilson, so the mountains here look super high just because of their rugged nature, but they're not particularly high. So you're not going to have any altitude issues, like trouble breathing or anything like that. I want to talk just for a minute or two about flying to Patagonia, and I'd go into this in more detail, but once we have like our confirmed travelers and everything. But here's what I've learned. I found that I got the best prices by booking separate round trip tickets. So, and I'll give it a for instance. So I booked a round trip ticket from LA to Buenos Aires and back. And then I booked a separate round trip ticket from Buenos Aires to El Calafate and back to Buenos Aires. Two separate tickets. Little bit of a hassle because you have to manage that separately. They have to, you have to transfer your own baggage and all of that stuff. But you would probably have to do that anyways. Traveling internationally, when you get to Buenos Aires, you'll have to go through, and get your bags anyways. But it saves a lot, and I'll show you some examples of that. Be aware that there are two airports in Buenos Aires. The airport codes are AEP and EZE. One of them is right in the city, right on the coastline, and the other one is about an hour and a half outside of the city. And when I went there in March last year, we flew into the bigger airport, the bigger, newer airport, which is outside the city, of course, and then we had to transfer to the airport in the city to fly to El Calafate. Now, you don't necessarily have to do that. There are flights to El Calafate from both of them, but it is a consideration when you're booking to be aware of, and I want to show you. That's one thing I've learned from this. I do mention, consider, a night or two before in Buenos Aires. There's a lot to see and do in Buenos Aires. and it's a very cosmopolitan sort of city. If you have never been down there, that might be worth doing. And it would give you a chance to acclimate to the time zone change and get over some of the jet lag. Because as I said, it's 5 hours earlier than those of us on the Pacific time zone. So I did some research today, and I looked up flights. You can see that I was looking at flights leaving on December 9th, because almost all of the flights will take you, and you'll end up being an overnight flight and getting there the next morning. So you'd get there on the 10th. And so you can see some examples here. These are from Los Angeles to Buenos Aires, and they run around 9:03, 9:15, 9:18. I kind of like this 9:15 one because it's going in from LAX to EZE, and it only has one stop. So I kind of like that. It ends up being a shorter total duration, 14 and a half hours instead of 19 hours or whatever. And, it's got an hour stop in Dallas, Fort Worth, and then it's going to EZE. So $915 for that leg. And then I would book separately from Buenos Aires to El Calafate, and you can see the prices there are about 203 is sort of the the general. There's some higher, but I think we could find one for 203 that would work well. And you can see here some of them originate in EZE, which is the airport that we're actually landing in from LAX. So I might choose that, even if it was more expensive, because it would avoid the hassle of transferring to another airport. Of course, if you're going to spend some time in Buenos Aires a night or two, that's a moot point, because you're going to land wherever you're going to land, and you're going to go into Buenos Aires. So it doesn't really matter which airport you leave from, but just something to be aware of. So you can see 915 plus 203 equals $1,118. If I do LAX to El Calafate all in, it ends up being much more expensive. You can see here examples, 1,600, 1,500, 2,000. So and the duration is ridiculously long. I don't know why this is, but that's what I found last time, and I found it just worked out better if you feel comfortable doing that. I'm happy to help you with those decisions. If you decide to sign up for this trip, I'll work with you to help you figure that out. All right. So that's sort of my spiel about what this is all about. I'm going to share a couple of links real quickly. Let me stop presenting, and I will share. I'm going to share a link in the chat, and if you this will go through into the oh yeah, Dennis is asking about the total trip cost. Yeah, $4,450 plus the airfare. So you'd have to add those together. So it's going to end up being 5,500.
6,000.
Yeah, 5,600, close to 6,000. Plus there are some meals there. Now
Expenses, meal, and
yeah, the meals in El Chalten typically, like we could, Joan and I, between the two of us, we could have a meal and maybe a glass of wine each or a beer each, and it would be about $20 to $25 for a good meal.
so the trip
That's
doesn't
not per
include
person. That's for two people. So it's much less expensive than it is in the U.S. and great food. So it doesn't cost a lot, to eat out or whatever. And the other thing that was cool is that we were able to use our debit card pretty much anywhere. So didn't have to bring a lot of local currency or do an exchange in the airport or at an ATM. We did do some, ended up not using a lot of it, and so just be aware of that. All right, so I shared a link to a Flickr page that has a bunch of photos from last year's trip, And for those of you, so it's in the chat if you are looking for that. I'm going to go ahead and share. I'll just share the screen. So the link that I shared, if you want to spend some time, you can go through and actually click and look at, each one of these, and it'll open it up, and you can kind of page through those. But you'll see some examples, like we got snowed on here, on one of the days, and you can see some more pictures from the Via Ferrata, and it was an awesome trip, and great scenery, great people, a lot of fun. As you can see, here's an example. Sharon's here wearing short, a sleeveless top, and then later on we're all wearing jackets. So layering on and off is going to be a thing that you'll have to do, and just a lot of fun, to be able to go there and see all this firsthand. A few other things I'll point out on the website itself. So I'll share this link as well. I think you've probably all got this, but I'm going to go ahead and share it in the chat. This is the link where you would request a spot. And you can find out, like what it includes and what it doesn't include, all the activities, there's 2 optional things here, the Via Ferrata and the Glacier Ice Track. It doesn't include, airport transfers. It doesn't include travel insurance, which I would recommend. Runs about, I think we paid a little over $100 for the 2 of us. So there's that. And then it has the itinerary. And so if you click show more days, it'll actually bring and break down each day and what's involved. And you get breakfast, or you get a box lunch because we're doing an all-day hike, that kind of thing. So you can see all of that information. And then you can also, if you scroll down, you'll see the cancellation policy. And I'll just touch on this briefly because it's there on the website for you. But basically, until the trip is confirmed and your spot is confirmed, once the trip is confirmed, then the 25% down payment becomes non-refundable. However, if you were to cancel for whatever reason, you had an emergency or something you had to cancel, there is a $100 cancellation fee, but the remainder of the non-refundable portion can be set aside as a trip credit for another trip with TrovaTrip. So you're able to do that.
What other trip
we had that situation come up with our Iceland trip last month. We had a gal, Ruth, here locally, who she had gone with us to Patagonia. She had also signed up for Iceland, and then something came up in her life that she couldn't go. And so some portion of that she received as a trip credit. And so she was asking me about some of the other trips that are out there that she could do. This was the travel visas thing on their website. So basically you can put in your information. You're going to Argentina. I can say I'm going from the US to Argentina. There we go.
Sweet.
And I can see my requirements, and it say visa is not required for up to 90 days. And I can click to get more details. If you wanted to if you had a different passport, you could change that to a different country, and it'll tell you. Okay, I think that's all that I have on here that I wanted to share. So I'm going to stop presenting that. And I hit some of these questions. So I see some folks here had some questions about the cost. Dennis, I think you have answered that pretty well. Obviously, the flight is going to be a variable. So depending on where you're coming from and that sort of thing, it could be more or less expensive. Jeanette, you asked, is this trip only offered in December? So I'm doing this trip in December. There are other people doing similar trips that might be in other months, and it'd be a different experience with different people, different hosts. And so you can look on the TrovaTrip website and absolutely check it out. See what else is there. You'll note that the costs will vary, and part of that is based on when the trip is, because we're going during a sort of prime season for this area.
December.
And the other thing that their default for these trips is a 3-star accommodations, and so we've upgraded from that. So it is a little more expensive than some of the other trips that are out there, but I think it's a good value. Bindu asks how to train for the hikes. I guess my advice is hiking. That's going to be the big thing, and doing some hikes that have some climbs as well, so some vertical gain. I'll share a training plan, and what I generally recommend is that you're doing, at least 10 miles and 2,000 feet of vertical. If you can do that, I'm not saying you have to do that every week or every day or anything like that, but if you can get to that point where you can do that and feel like, yes, I can do this, and then I can do a hike the next day, maybe half that distance, and I'm not dead, then you're doing pretty well. So, but I'll go into those kind of details once we have our travelers kind of set up. We'll go into all of that, and I'm happy to answer any of those sort of detailed questions about how you can get ready for this. Another thing to be aware of is that, the activities are in fact optional. So like, if you get to, like you're not feeling well one day or something like that, and you don't want to do the hike, you're welcome to stay at the hotel. You can go walk around the town. You can, hang out, have a coffee in a cafe, or do some gift shopping. That's totally okay. I feel like you would not want to do that unless you have to. And hopefully you won't have to, because you'll be having so much fun with the group and looking forward to the hikes. And that's really the reason we're doing this thing. So let's see. No need to pack helmets, Adrian. No need to pack traction devices. Now, no need to pack crampons. So when we do a glacial trek, they provide helmets, they provide crampons. You don't need specialized mountaineering boots or anything like that. I think if you have a stiff-soled hiking boot, that's going to work really well.
Carry the weight.
Yeah, there are people, and I will admit I'm one of them. I like to hike normally in trail runners, and I actually use those with crampons. I know you're not supposed to. I did it, and I survived and lived to tell about it. Obviously, they're not going to provide the kind of stability laterally with a crampon that a boot would. So a boot would be probably recommended for that, but no need to bring all of that. Having said that, I might bring a pair of microspikes. And I think the thing to do is just kind of watch the weather and see what's happening. Obviously, you can't take those in carry-on, so that would be something you pack. And I will definitely bring a pair of trekking poles. And that's another thing you have to pack. You have to pack it in a checked bag. And good night, Jeanette. Glad you could join. Whit's got a question about gluten-free food. It is fairly easy. We had a couple on our trip in March who were eating gluten-free, and most of the places we went, there was some kind of option available for them. And as far as like breakfast and things like that, there's lots of options, lots of fresh fruit, and, other things besides grains and things like that. Any other questions you guys have that I haven't covered? Who's ready to sign up? Karen, all right. That'll be great. We have actually 2 people signed up already, so there's 4 of us now, with my wife and I and 2 other people. And one of the gals that signed up was with us last year in March. She's already done this trip, and she's coming back for round 2. So, and I think that's the best testimonial I could possibly ask for, is that they went and they loved it so much, like I did, and my wife Joan did, that we're coming back to do it again. So, and she's bringing another friend with her. So,
so Jeff, is the July, is December, which date? July when?
December 10th through the 17th are the dates.
My son is visiting from Bali for Christmas, skiing in Japan.
Oh, when
We'll
does he
see.
get there? When does he get here?
No, they live in Canggu in Bali, coming for Christmas for skiing here. So I didn't realize it was December. I thought it was more the end. Okay, never
Yeah,
mind.
it is December 10th through the
December 10th,
17th. So it's sort of the
17th,
middle of
10
December.
to
So you
17th.
you have a full week, when you get back home before Christmas. But
We'll see when they come.
yeah, yeah.
I was actually there a few years ago, but I didn't hike.
Oh, well, this would be I love
Yeah.
this trip. One of the things I love about this trip and this itinerary is that the hikes are amazing,
Oh,
and
yeah, I know.
they're
Yeah, it's
beautiful. They're
beautiful.
they're challenging. You feel like you really did, a big
Yeah,
hike, and that's a good feeling. You
yeah.
earn those beautiful views, and you get sort of the comforts of a hot shower and
Mhm.
comfortable bed every night, and a chance if you wanted to go soak in a hot tub, or have a cold beer at a microbrewery in the middle of Patagonia.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
beautiful.
how awesome is
It's
that?
Yeah, it's a very beautiful place.
Yeah, Karen, the dates again are
Mm.
December 10th through the 17th.
17,
And
yeah,
yeah,
Kansas.
so what and based on the flights, that will mean that leaving on the 9th, if you want to get
Nice.
there on the 10th.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's nothing happening on the 10th except for the welcome dinner. So as long as you're there by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you get a chance to get to the
10.
hotel and all that. It's pretty easy.
It's 10 through 17, right?
10 through the 17th. Yeah. Coming back, it was not an
Oh,
overnight flight, as I recall. I'll have to go back and check.
2018 countries.
Yeah, yeah. So if when you come back on the 17th, we have breakfast, head to the airport, and take off. There's a possibility you could get back on that same day because of the time difference, because 5 hour time difference.
So it's still 17 or 18?
It could still be the 17th. It's all going to depend on the flights that you pick and all of
Sometimes,
that.
yeah.
It's a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions about Patagonia? We had no language issues. I speak un poquito Espanol, but not a lot, and I think that's really all you need is just to be polite, to say hola and, gracias, por favor, all of those things, that's going to be helpful. There is internet service. I was able to use most places have free Wi-Fi. I'm on T-Mobile. I was able to use T-Mobile down there in El Calafate. The hotels have free Wi-Fi. So, like the translators work really well for signs, labels, menus, that kind of thing. And in fact, most of the menus and everything in the restaurants, they have English and Spanish. It's a very popular destination for people from all over the place. So you'll see, you have people speaking German, or you'll have people speaking English or French. People from all over the world come here, and English kind of becomes the de facto language of communication for a lot of the transactions there. So
Yeah. Same thing in the Everest Base Camp hike too. Everybody speak English.
yeah.
It's an international place. Yeah.
Let's see. Any other questions? One thing that we did, so I think if you look on the website, it'll talk, tips are not included. What we did that worked really well last time is we did sort of a collection of tips and put it all in an envelope. And we did this twice. Once, so our local guide handed that out to the hiking guides at the end, and then we had a separate one that we gave to our local guide who was with us, Carlos, who was with us through the whole week. And and that's just a nice way to support what they're doing, and they do a lot, so it's really appreciated.
So the whole 6 nights or 7 nights you stay in the same hotel?
So we're staying in a
Lunch.
hotel every night. We're not camping at
Oh,
all.
same hotel. Oh, the whole
We're in two different
hotel.
hotels. So we're
Oh, two
in,
different hotel.
yeah, we're in, because we'll fly into El Calafate
That's right.
and we'll stay the first night there. And then we go to El Chalten and we're there for, I don't know, four nights, 5 nights. I can't remember. But if you read through the itinerary, it explains where that is. And then we go back to El Calafate, same hotel, most likely,
Okay.
and for our final night.
So during the hiking days, always stay in the same place. In other words, during the days
Correct.
you okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's correct.
So only
Yeah.
4 days hiking, right? 5 days hiking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. 4 days hiking or 5 days?
Well, so there's we can on the itinerary
Mm-hmm.
it will break that down. So let me
Go
look
ahead.
at that again. So there's like maybe two full day hikes that are,
Okay.
the 14 mile and the 16 mile. There's another hike that was 8 or 9 miles, and that was like a half a day hike, I would call it. And then there's a couple other hikes, just to the Mirador de los Condores. We did that a couple times. And then there's options. So like if somebody doesn't do the Via Ferrata, there are little shorter hikes that you can do to a beautiful waterfall right from the hotel. And so there's some hiking or going on pretty much every day. The one exception might be the Via Ferrata day where we do that, or the Glacier Trek. If you're doing a Glacier Trek, that's sort of a hike, but it's not super long, and it's not it's a much easier than those other big hikes that we do, certainly.
But you need to be 65 below.
That is correct. Yes.
So I won't be qualified.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Karen.
So all the transportation then taking us from the hotel to the different hotels, is that included, or are we paying?
Yes. No.
That's
Yeah,
included.
that is included. So
Meals or extra, and then any souvenirs and
yeah.
Well, I think
Yeah. So you'll see that
I
on
thought
the
meal was included.
yeah, you'll see that on the website. All of the breakfasts pretty much are included. Many of the lunches, well, I don't want to say many, but some of the lunches are included. So when we do a full day thing, obviously there's no place to get a lunch, so they provide a box lunch for you. And if you need a vegetarian or whatever, gluten-free, you can request that, and they'll provide something for you. And then the dinners, other than the welcome dinner and the farewell dinner, the other dinners are on our own. And sometimes what we did is like the first night or our second night, so not the welcome dinner, but the second night, which was our first night in El Chalten, we all went out together to the same place, but just had separate checks and split it that way, and that worked really well. They're used to that there, so it's not a problem to do that, and it wasn't expensive at all. So and then as we got more comfortable, like some people would split off into groups and like, oh, I want to go try this veggie restaurant over here, or I want to try that, or I feel like pizza tonight, whatever you want. And so people will sometimes split up that way, and that's totally fine as well. But you'll always have the option to, be as for as much togetherness as you are desiring of.
And then, like, what time did the hike start? Like the 14 mile?
Yeah, it varies a little bit, depends on the day and what is happening. So typically, oh gosh.
But you're gonna have daylight because it's summer there.
Yeah, you will have daylight. It is we would have breakfast and then we would meet and start hiking. So like 8 o'clock in the morning, or maybe even later, depending on what it is, but generally around 8 o'clock or so.
16 miles. That's like it's about 7 hours hike, right? 16 miles.
Yeah.
So if you start at 8, you finish pretty late for night.
Well, not at night. Yeah. I mean, you finish in the afternoon. You get back at 4.
For 18 miles. It's a long lake.
16 miles. 16 miles. Yeah.
16 miles that needs about what? How many hours?
So 8 hours,
Mm-hmm.
2 miles an hour. I don't know.
That's about right.
That's about what I do. So, and of course, you spend some time up there at the top and look around. So you spend an hour up there. So probably 9 hours altogether.
Mm-hmm.
When I did the 14 miler, I have a Strava track for, and I'm looking here. Our moving time was 6 hours and 14 minutes, but our total time was 8 hours and 39 minutes because we,
Okay.
stopped and took pictures and hung out and did all that.
Whoosh.
So doing these sort of trips is something. The one that we did in Patagonia in March, that was our first time. That was my first time kind of hosting this and gathering a group of people to do it. And I wasn't sure what it would be like. I was a little nervous about that because, it's a group thing. And I've always done my own sort of self-guided travel with my wife. And that's all I've experienced, really. And we had a blast. It was great. And I think that's, as long as you come with a positive attitude and you're, looking to have a great experience, and we all share a background and love of the mountains and love of hiking. And then I think it's going to be something that, everybody kind of clicks and we all have a good time and it's a great experience. So much so that I did it again. So we did Iceland last month. In winter in January and saw the Northern Lights 2 nights and just had an amazing experience in Iceland. And now the next trip on the books right now is this one in Patagonia in December.
Oh, so you just finished Iceland, huh? That's where I
Yeah,
wanted to go. Oh my God, I didn't know that. I didn't know you were running that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's where I always want to go.
All right. Well, hey, Dennis, thanks for joining. Let me, if anybody who drops off or anybody who's still on the call, if you have any questions whatsoever and, want to, shoot me a line personally, you can reach me. I'm going to put it in here now, but
What's your number? I cannot see it.
you can reach me online. So if you found this through our Ben Hiking Meetup, you can reach me there. So no problem. If you found me through Facebook or Instagram, you know how to get a hold of me there. Otherwise, you can feel free to reach out to me on my email, which is jeff.hester, Hester, at socialadventures.net. And I'm happy to, answer any questions or help you through that. And I'll try to see, let's see if I can get to the folks who were on here. I think the meeting notes that Google Meet generates will tell me who was here. So I'll be able to send out a link to any of the recording or the notes from this, and you'll be able to reach me again through that. All right. Any other last questions? Should we wrap it up?
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all for joining. I hope to see you in Patagonia.
Yeah. Sorry, December. So yeah. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. How do I get out? Can I get out? Can I get out?